Greetings, booktubers, and welcome back to Grammaticus Books. Welcome to what's going to be a very different book review here today on the channel, because today we're talking about an autobiography made by a Masai warrior from Kenya in Africa. It's the autobiography of Tepilit Ole Saitoti. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. I may not be. In his autobiographical work, The Worlds of a Masai Warrior. Now, I have been looking for a good book on the Masai of Kenya for a very, very long time, and I finally found this copy here at my local library. I just finished reading it literally about 10 minutes ago, and I wanted to get my first impressions here of it up on the channel as quick as I could, as they were still fresh in my mind. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. It is a book that is written by an individual who was born into a Masai tribe back in 1949, when they were still living there as they had lived several hundred years in the past, when they first moved into the Serengeti in Kenya and conquered it by force of arms and maintained it by force of arms, killing intruders back in the 1950s and the 1960s if they interposed themselves into their lands. And there were still poachers that they had to fight. There were wild animals that they had to defend themselves against, hyenas, panthers, lions that were roaming the plains, that were a real threat to their livelihood and their life and existence. You didn't wander outside of the kraal, your village, at night for fear of being killed by wild animals. And their entire life revolves around herding cattle. Their wealth is based upon cattle. The tribes and a man's status is based upon how many cattle he has. And the tribe and the family unit all work in order to maintain the cattle there on the highlands and the plains of the Serengeti. And this is Tepilit Ole Saitoti's account of living in that society and then moving out of that society that is living at the standard, living in the fashion that people have been living in Africa for thousands of years, with a very direct and forthright and workmanlike account of what that life is like. And it is difficult to imagine that people were living that way just a short time ago, just nearly 50 years in the past, that they were still living in that manner. I do not know how much technology has penetrated into the Masai of today, but this is a fascinating account, particularly because Saitoti was able to attend a British parochial school in Kenya that opened his eyes to education, which led him to want more education. And he eventually travels to Munich, Germany, where he gets a higher education in Munich, dealing with the German language, where he could become an interpreter for companies that were working with Germans. And then he also works his way over to the United States of America through just his force of will and his iron determination to improve himself and to continue his education against the will of his father and against the will of the Masai land and the Masai tribesmen back in Kenya. And he goes to America. He goes to all types of different cities throughout America: Los Angeles, Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., and he actually gets a degree from Emerson University, and he graduates with honors, having grown up almost to a teenager actually in Masai land, never having learned how to read or anything about the modern world. And it's an amazing accomplishment, and it's amazing to look at the worlds of Europe and the worlds of America through the eyes of a tribesman from ancient Africa, living in the style of ancient Africa, having never known or seen any of these ways or technological ways or the ways of civilized society, and then being introduced into it, having come from that tribal societal level of existence. And it's an amazing story. In addition to that, he has an interlude in there where he works as a park ranger for the British in the Serengeti National Park, defending the park and the animals against poachers. And then he goes on and he becomes a tourist guide for people visiting the Serengeti. And it's as a tourist guide that he meets up with a National Geographic Society expedition that's doing a documentary on the Serengeti and the Masai. And he's the subject of that documentary that's called Man of the Serengeti. And you can still find this this movie that was made by the National Geographic Society online on YouTube, and I will link it down in the description below. I highly encourage you to go check it out. It's an amazing story. This is an amazing book. I do recommend it. It's a bit outside of my normal bailiwick, but it was a wonderful read. It's written in a very direct, workmanlike, but understandable and clear manner, in a straight line chronological order of how his life developed, going from a boy in Masai land to a park ranger, to a tourist guide, to Germany, to America, and then back to Masai land in Kenya. And it's a fascinating, fascinating book. But that's it. That's my review here of The Worlds of a Masai Warrior. I enjoyed this book thoroughly. I do recommend it if that sounds like something that's interesting to you. And with that, I'm going to wrap this one up, and I'm going to say take care, be safe, and I'll catch you guys next time.